My breath came in ragged gasps, and cold sweat dripped down my face as I pressed my back against the wall, heart pounding. The lights flickered above me, casting eerie shadows that danced in the corners of my vision. I could hear it, no, feel it, coming closer. The sound of shuffling feet, the whisper of something unnatural moving through the darkness. I glanced down the long, dimly lit hallway of the night ward, where doors to patient rooms hung open like the mouths of waiting predators. "Show yourself!" I shouted, though my voice trembled, betraying my fear. But there was no reply, only the ever-approaching presence, growing colder and more oppressive with each passing second. My flashlight flickered, then died, plunging me into near darkness. I wasn't sure if I would survive the night. How did it come to this? I thought back to how it all began. 2 months earlier, I took the job at St. Benedict's Asylum out of necessity. The pay was decent, and as a struggling college student, the night shift seemed like an easy way to make money while studying. The asylum, an imposing Gothic structure on the outskirts of town, had a reputation for being haunted. Stories circulated about the night ward, where the most disturbed patients were housed. I dismissed them as mere ghost tales. My first night started uneventfully. I was introduced to the head nurse, Mrs. Harper, an older woman with a stern demeanor. She gave me a tour of the asylum, emphasizing the importance of security and routine. "Night ward is your primary responsibility," she said, her voice firm. "Make sure the patients are secure and monitor them through the night. And remember, don't go into room 13. It's been sealed off for years." Her words piqued my curiosity, but I nodded and took my post. The first few nights were quiet, almost boring. I patrolled the halls, checked on the patients, and caught up on my studies. But then, the incidents began. It started with small things. Cold spots in the hallways, lights flickering, and the feeling of being watched. One night, I heard whispers, faint and indistinct, coming from room 13. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to the wind or my imagination, but the whispers grew louder each night. One particularly cold night, I was making my rounds when I noticed a door slightly ajar. It was room 13. My heart raced as I approached, the whispers now clear and insistent, almost beckoning me. I hesitated, recalling Mrs. Harper's warning, but curiosity got the better of me. I pushed the door open, revealing a room shrouded in darkness. The air was thick and cold, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. In the center of the room stood an old, rusted hospital bed with restraints, as if it had been waiting for a new occupant. As I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for the light switch, but it was useless. The room remained pitch black. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me, filling my mind with incoherent, maddening voices. My flashlight flickered to life, and in its beam, I saw shadows moving along the walls, unnatural and terrifying. I bolted from the room, my heart pounding, and slammed the door behind me. My breathing was ragged, and I could still hear the whispers, muffled but persistent. I resolved never to go near room 13 again, but it seemed the room, or whatever was in it, had other plans. Over the next few weeks, my nights were plagued by increasingly disturbing events. Doors would open and close on their own, objects moved inexplicably, and the whispers followed me everywhere. My dreams were filled with visions of twisted faces and shadowy figures, always watching, always whispering. I confided in Mrs. Harper, but she dismissed my concerns. "It's just your imagination, dear. This place can play tricks on your mind." But I knew what I experienced was real. I began to research the history of St. Benedict's, discovering a dark past filled with tales of cruel treatments and tragic deaths. Room 13, in particular, had a sinister reputation. It was once occupied by a patient named Alice, who was subjected to horrific experiments by a sadistic doctor. She died under mysterious circumstances, and it was said her spirit remained, seeking revenge on anyone who disturbed her rest. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to confront whatever haunted the night ward. I couldn't continue living in fear. One night, I returned to room 13, determined to put an end to the torment. I brought a bundle of sage and a lighter, hoping to cleanse the room and rid it of its dark presence. As I entered, the air grew colder, and the whispers turned into angry hisses. I lit the sage and began to chant a cleansing prayer, but the shadows around me seemed to grow darker, more solid. The door slammed shut, trapping me inside once again. Suddenly, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I spun around, but there was no one there. The whispers became a cacophony of screams, and I saw the figure of a young woman, her eyes hollow and filled with pain, standing at the foot of the bed. She reached out to me, her mouth moving but no sound came out. Terror paralyzed me as the temperature dropped further, and the room seemed to close in. The figure stepped closer, her hand outstretched, and I felt the necklace I always wore tighten around my neck, cutting off my breath. I dropped the sage, my hands clawing at the necklace as it constricted further. Back in the hallway, gasping for breath, I realized the only way to escape the nightmare was to acknowledge Alice's pain and seek her forgiveness. Alice, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what happened to you. The whispers stopped, and the pressure around my neck eased. The figure of Alice appeared before me, her expression softer, almost grateful. She slowly faded away, leaving me in the silent, empty hallway. I collapsed to the floor, shaking, the weight of the experience pressing down on me. As I lay there, the reality began to shift. My mind cleared, revealing the true nature of my surroundings. Mrs. Harper's voice echoed in my mind. It's just your imagination, dear. But now, I understood the truth. The next morning, I found myself in a different room, bright and sterile. Doctors and nurses surrounded me, discussing my condition. Alice's episodes are becoming more frequent. We need to adjust her medication. I wasn't a night shift worker. I was Alice, the patient in room 13, one of the many lost souls in St. Benedict's asylum. The night ward's ghosts were my own creation, manifestations of my fractured mind. The true horror was realizing that the shadows and whispers would never truly leave me. They were a part of me, and the haunting of room 13 was just another fragment of my broken reality.